I can assure all of you this is the place I want to be more than anything.
It was the Eisenhower era, a gray flannel decade shaped by fear that was the fallout of World War II. In 1953, Catherine Watson came to Wellesley College and encountered a conservative world of rules and regulations.
Just a few rules. No loud noises, no radio or hi-fi, but no hot plates and no male visitors.
I don't think I can go a year without a hot plate.
Don't you just love chintz? And look,
they match.
Conformity was expected. Individuality was not. So in the 1950s, women put on a happy face and raised their families. But it wouldn't be long before what women wanted was their freedom.
This was one of those opportunities to do something that was very specific and at the same time still tangible, I think, to modern day.
Women like Catherine Watson don't get married because they choose not to get married.
No woman chooses to have a life without a home.
It's a very interesting period because it's transitional.
This is where the great frontline troops of the women's movement were cutting their teeth.
It was a time full of really great music and pretty dresses and houses that you could get for no money if you fought in the war. But underneath it was a whole other reality.
It's a glamorous time period in the way it looks, but underneath the surface, people, I think, weren't as perfect as they tried to pretend to be.
ta-da! Beautiful. You've got everything you've ever dreamed of.
You will too. There was all these rules and regulations on how to be a good housewife and, you know, to always pretend you're happy and cover it all and just put on that smile. And so that's like the thing, this repressiveness that we're trying to break from.
Coffee?
It was at a period of time when women were being recorseted, being sent back into the home, and now they're being told, go have an education, but you should get an MRS degree.
While our mothers were called to the workforce for Lady Liberty, it is our duty, nay, obligation, to reclaim our place in the home, bearing the children that will carry our traditions into the future.
It was such an interesting period because here you have all of the women working during the war. Then the men came home and society needed to rebalance, and women who were given all the choices during the war, now all choices were taken away and they were told you should be at home. You have a national agenda that says stay at home.
Girls like Joan use their jobs as lucrative intervals between school and marriage. Their incomes are seldom high, but then neither are their job ambitions. Joan can be said to be marking time.
The thing about the 50s that seems so interesting is it really was a time of family and of tradition. And then as a culture, we really became ruled by television and advertising and what appliances we had and what automobile we had. And it's not dissimilar in a way to the trends of today and our electronics and the materialism that we have today.
It's important when you do a movie like this that you present what it was all of the women were buying into. We can't scoff at it. My mother says that she feels that there's a brainwashing going on from the government about buy, consumerism aimed at keeping women in the home.
Many new inventions will grace store shelves. This cordless iron, for example, eliminates many of the nuisances connected with the family wash.
I had very good researchers who prepared big briefs for me. The jobs that women could do were very prescribed. You could be a teacher, you could be a secretary, or you could be a nurse, and that was about it. There was no sense that your education was valuable in its own right, nor that you were going anywhere with your education. So the basis of the story is absolutely real.
When Mike Newell came on, he had some really vibrant and interesting ideas, and you think, wow, okay, I didn't think of any of that stuff.
There was a tremendous amount of argument in the story about what women should and shouldn't be doing, all of which had the air, at any rate, of never having been publicly broached before. And so this notion of opening a can of worms was really strong in it.
It's 6:15, and your husband's called to say that Smith, Jones, and their wives have been invited at the boss's request. You keep your cool and understand
that the boss is probably testing you as much as your husband. What next? Yes.
File for divorce?
That's very funny.
Giselle has been desperate for some kind of outlet for the feelings she has and the things she needs, which don't necessarily fit into the norm of 1953 or 1954.
This isn't what I think it is. Is it?
Where'd you get it?
From the school nurse.
It's against the law.
Oh, honey. It's a girl's best friend.
A certain kind of girl.
Meet the last virgin bride.
It was a mindset that you just had to get married after college, and you wouldn't question it, why, or it's just the way things were.
Tommy and Spencer looking at an engagement ring. For you.
That's everything we always wanted.
1953 was such a period of conformity. Everybody would only do what the next guy was doing.
And so while these people were normal at their core, they spend a lot of time and energy into being perfect.
Good wife lets her husband think that everything's his idea, even when it's not.
What was this about the poem you wanted me to read, or?
It was your idea, don't you remember?
I never said that.
Ready? Excellent.
What's great is that they're talking about a general topic like marriage, but you see each different character revealing something about themselves.
It says here that you're pre-law. What law school are you going to go to?
I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, after I graduate, I plan on getting married.
And then?
And then I'll be married. I think watching any sort of change and watching people making drastic decisions that are different from what they would have made at the beginning of the movie is always interesting to watch on screen.
This is Catherine Watson. Oh, wow. In the flesh. You did something to impress her.
Well, it seems you did too.
Mike said to me in the audition, this is not a time when 40-year-olds wanted to be 20. This was a time when 20-year-olds wanted to be 40. And that blew me away.
I know, I'm late. I'm abject pleading, apologies, forgiveness.
Is she giving you any trouble? Because these girls can't come back on time, you know what I say? I say lock them out, lock them out!
Topher Grace, he's pretty much insensitive to any ambition that she might have, and insensitive in his own interest. You know, it's what he wants, it's what the man wants, it's what it was in 1953.
There's sort of still 10 years before the feminist movement really took hold and started to really challenge assumptions that particularly men had lived with, you know, for generations.
In 1953 and 54, women were perceived through the eyes of men. That's just the way it was. And so I think that there might be something really fascinating about the fact that there's all of these actresses who are very opinionated and specific and thinking as well as feeling people, being manipulated and moved by a man who's also very powerful and interesting and smart and feeling. You know, I think it sort of mirrors in a way the situation that was happening in 1953.
All right, here we go. Quiet, rehearsing, ready.
Gather around, children. This is his self-portrait. No camouflage, no romance, honesty. Now, 60 years later, where is he?
Here's a woman who comes east because she wants to be with the brightest women in the country, because she thinks if any change is going to happen or anything exciting is going to happen, it will come from them.
50 years ago, things really were a lot more difficult for women, figuring out what our options were and how to navigate our way in the world. And so I think that's a nice structure.
I think what it's really about is choice, because the early 50s were about lack of choice. And it was about re-pulling the corset strings, and it set the seeds, didn't it, for the 60s when the corsets or the bras were burned.
But today, sometimes the bigger question is, what if I don't want any of that? Am I okay? I don't want any of that, which is what Joan's character, Julia Stiles' character, goes through.
I want a home, I want a family. That's not something I'll sacrifice.
No one's asking you to sacrifice that, Joan. I just want you to understand that you can do both.
There are some women in this film, there are some characters who will go out and change the system. But there are also the women who really do want to choose to be housewives.
I think that's what makes the movie so interesting, is that each one of them are individuals and they're faced with different choices, with different dilemmas, with different dreams. And in their own way, each one of them pursues them, including Catherine.
How else will you remember us?
I think it's a movie that says choose. And I think it's a movie that says, and when someone chooses, respect it.
You're the one who said I could do anything I wanted. This is what I want.
And I think where we came from is so important, because if you don't know that, it's hard to figure out where you want to go.
Go home and hug your mom and say thanks.